Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for staying back. I'd just like to announce that Nancy's my new hero, and I really wanted to ask her to come to Australia to help us to achieve some of what they've achieved in New Zealand. And it's not such a bad place to come. In Sydney, we have quite a good lifestyle, so please consider it. Slides, other way? Oh, yes, okay. So, look, I'd like to start by just giving you a background on the current situation on nicotine in Australia. The biggest problem we have is that nicotine's illegal based on our poison standards. So, poisons and medicines in Australia are categorised, have 9 categories, and nicotine's categorised as a dangerous poison, and that means it's in a category similar to strychnine and arsenic. This is a historical anomaly, and of course this was long before e-cigarettes arrived. But as a result of it being in that category, it's illegal to sell, buy, use or possess nicotine. Interestingly, there are actually 2 exceptions to that rule, and they are that it's legal, it's specifically exempted for use in tobacco, so go figure, or in nicotine replacement therapy. So we've got this ridiculous, paradoxical situation. The other area of law regarding e-cigarettes is the state laws, and all states we have seven states, or states and territories, and they all have specific regulations around nicotine products, vaping products, and they regulate them as tobacco products. And they do put restrictions, and increasingly these restrictions are becoming harsher and harsher to the point where one of the states is now introducing internet sale bans. So it's increasingly becoming a problem. The latest research on smoking and vaping rates just was published only this week, and we found from the Australian survey that the current vaping rate in Australians 14 and over is 1.2%, which is a long way below the 5.6% from the UK, the 5% from Europe, which is not surprising. The highest vaping rates, of course, are in current smokers, of whom only 1.5% use e-cigarettes daily, which is a problem because that's not very effective. 1% of ex-smokers use e-cigarettes, and the majority of those are daily, and clearly these are people who have quit smoking and are using e-cigarettes effectively. But what's also interesting and important is that the rates of vaping are growing dramatically, even in this very restrictive e-cigarette environment. From 2013 to 16, the rates of people who were current vapers, or who had ever vaped, went from 4.5 to 8%, roughly doubled. And amongst smokers, the rate of people who had ever vaped went from 18.8 to 31%. So in spite of these restrictions, many people are embracing vaping. The problem we have in Australia is this, what we call the balance of power. So on the one hand, we have the 9 health departments in Australia. We have all our public health organisations. We have our medical associations. We have our peak health bodies, TGA, National Health and Medical Research Council, basically all opposed to e-cigarettes. On the other hand, we have a small number of researchers, academics and clinicians, policymakers. We have the New Nicotine Alliance. We have some libertarians who are supporting our case. But you can basically see what we're up against. So it's a big challenge, and that's why we need Nancy and we need all the support we can get. Recently, we did apply to the Therapeutic Goods Administration, which is our drugs regulator, this is our FDA, to ask them to exempt nicotine from the poison standard, to say, look, this is not a dangerous poison. In fact, it has relatively minor health effects. And we want this removed for low concentrations, for tobacco, for harm reduction, for vaping specifically for harm reduction. And we acknowledged that appropriate restrictions would be appropriate. And this submission was prepared by the New Nicotine Alliance, and it basically talked about, yes, the low toxicity of nicotine. This is an inappropriate classification. We talked about the public health benefit. the clear benefit to smokers in quitting and the benefit to public health, and the paradox of allowing people the widespread sale of cigarettes while denying people access to the least harmful form of nicotine. There were 54 supporting submissions, 17 opposed. The committee, unfortunately, consists of mostly government representatives who have a very clear view and 4 appointees. We're not really sure what their views were, but as expected, the application was rejected. So clearly we felt the science supported that change, but of course the TGA's arguments were that, well, the World Health Organisation, our peak health body, the National Health Medical Research Council, the US Surgeon General have all said that this is something we shouldn't be doing. They focused on the risks, almost exclusively overlooking the public health benefits. And a lot of the small and theoretical risks, oh yes, but they blow up, and oh yes, but what about popcorn lung, all the usual nonsense. And they discounted the huge benefits that we're seeing. The Far-Salinos study of 6 million people having quit in Europe in 2014, the numbers from UK, the ASH numbers of people who have quit. And they rejected the tobacco harm reduction outright. Even though it's part of our national tobacco strategy, they said, no, well, we don't do it that way in Australia. They even denied that the FCTC supports harm reduction, and that was clearly wrong. And the other argument is that we've been so successful in Australia, we don't even need to use e-cigarettes. You know, we have had very low quit rates, but interestingly, just last week, the latest national smoking data came out, and we have had absolutely no change in smoking rates for 3 years, in spite of plain packaging and in spite of almost the highest cost of cigarettes in the world. It may just be that there's a small role here for e-cigarettes, and I think that actually gives us, it's bad news, but it gives us, I think, more ammunition for going back and making the case. So we've sort of given up on that option. So now we're looking at Plan B, and this is a legislative change. So we're trying to get the government to introduce a law to just make that change on its own. So we've been meeting with members of parliament, health committees, lots of emails and petitions. Some of you have signed petitions in this room from international and Australian experts. We've been arranging for senators to ask questions in the special question time where they speak to bureaucrats. One of the senators is producing a private members' bill, and if that was passed, that would change the law, but of course it won't be. We have support from many MPs, so we know there's support there. So all this lobbying actually has paid off, and it was announced last week, the Parliamentary Health Committee will be doing an inquiry on e-cigarettes. So they won't have the bureaucracy telling them what to do. They won't have all the health organisations. They're going to look at the evidence themselves, and hopefully, with all the submissions that we can organise, and I'm hoping as many people as possible can make a submission to talk some common sense. But they're very supportive, this particular committee. We've visited nearly all of them. Alex Waylack and I have actually addressed the committee. The chairman is a smoker, has a very strong support for e-cigarettes. One of the members is a doctor who's very supportive. So we're optimistic. But it doesn't end there, because once they make a decision, the politicians still have to then change the law. And it's not so simple. It's not just, oh, the evidence is there. It's how we're going to not lose votes over this, who we're going to get to vote for it. There's a strong anti-vaping lobby that will fight us at every step. And our National Health and Medical Research Council, our peak health body, recently came out with a statement saying it doesn't support the use of e-cigarettes. Again, based on the World Health Organisation, ignoring the College of Physicians report, Public Health England, and it's very hard for politicians to say, oh, we think this should be changed, if the national peak health body actually has an opposing view. So we are working on them quietly behind the scenes. I just briefly wanted to mention something we're very excited about. This was an idea that, again, Alex came up with, the Switch to Vaping campaign. We've talked a lot at this conference about misperceptions about vaping. So we're starting a campaign where we're going to try and correct community misperceptions and raise awareness of smoking. And it's going to be a public education campaign run by a group of doctors, so independently run by doctors, who will be forming a not-for-profit company with a proper legal entity. We're going to get funding from the vendors and whoever else, not tobacco companies obviously, but that will be at arm's length, with a view to having a detailed website on safety of e-cigarettes, where to buy them, how to use them, other resources, and regular media campaigns. So on Stop Smoking, World No Tobacco Day will have a campaign to, or if some new research comes out, a campaign with a public relations company handling all that for us. And just finally, so we're very excited about that. I think that's going to make a difference to the hearts and minds. I think we've got to win the people as well as a politician. And just finally, some of the other things we're doing, we're writing lots of op-eds. We've got a very friendly journalist, Joe Hildebrand, a very funny fellow who's written lots of good articles on vaping. And he's had, I think, quite a lot of influence. I sent him an op-ed about a year ago, and 3 months later I sent another one. I said, look, thank you so much for publishing the last one. And he said to me, well, look, thank you, because I read your op-ed and I stopped smoking, and I've been vaping ever since. And he's still vaping. So we're making the most of it, and he's a wonderful ally, and obviously passionate for personal reasons. So we're making presentations in conferences, running workshops, we're writing peer-reviewed journal articles, we're liaising with other organisations, libertarian organisations, and we've had a certain amount of media coverage. We had a story on 60 Minutes recently, which is a big event in Australia, the radio interviews, and there is a certain amount of research being done in Australia. So it's a multi-pronged approach, but we have a lot hanging on this parliamentary report. And as I said, if you do have the opportunity to write a few words to this parliamentary report, I'm very happy to provide those details. They're available online, and that would be appreciated. Thank you.